Well, thanks very much for joining us, everybody. My name is Sam Hodgson. I am Head of Client Services here at Invanity. Some of you will recognise my face, some of you would have met me at previous Marketing Camp events. And to my right is Mitzi.
Hello, I'm the lead designer here. You probably haven't met me before.
Today we're going to be talking a little bit about what's essentially CRO, conversion rate optimization, but more specifically around what can you do to get more out of your website without going through a whole redesign exercise. And this is something that we come across quite often. I think it's really tempting at times just to feel like your website isn't working and you've got to start from scratch. But actually now, more than ever, there's more opportunities to kind of do some really cool stuff with plugins, with tools to find out where are you losing traffic, where is your biggest drop-off points, and how can you kind of remediate them without having to kind of essentially start from scratch, because web builds, as we all know, is a very expensive, a very time laborious exercise. So it's not something that you can do too often and very quickly. Mm-hmm. So I guess to start with, why do you think, Mitzi, that businesses are why do they jump to redesign so often rather than kind of just going back and looking at what's already there and seeing what more they can get from what they already have?
Because for most businesses, they think it's the easier option because they don't know where to start. They think just by doing a rebuild in itself, it should just get more people in because it's something that they can talk about. But if it's not drawing people in naturally through Google, then no one will see it anyway. Yeah,
I think from my experience, whenever you bring new blood into a marketing team, right? Whenever you bring in, so let's say you bring in a new CMO, a new, marketing administrator, whatever that role is, it's often a temptation to kind of reinvent the wheel. It feels like you come in and you see a website that's potentially a little bit dated, a little bit old. We know how quickly things move. Like there's a little bit of a temptation to just start from scratch, to put a bullet in your existing site and go, right, this isn't what I want. This isn't how I would build a site. So we've got to start again. Mm-hmm. When really, now more than ever, like it's easier than ever to grow a sitemap, to add more pages on without having to kind of reinvent the wheel. Mm. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is just because you've got a fixed site structure in place, you don't have to rebuild that entire site in order to see gains with conversion rate, with kind of inquiries, traffic. Like there's things you can do with landing pages, there's things you can do with CTAs, which can move that needle without you kind of needing to go through a whole rewireframing exercise.
Yeah, I mean, some of the biggest killers are the lack of CTAs above the fold anyway, along with poor H-tag structure and unobvious hero images, things that link off to something that's not even relevant. So everything above the fold can be just as important and bring as many conversions as the rest of your page, because what you see straight away really determines whether or not a visitor will stay.
I think that's a nice kind of segue into something we were talking about more recently, was around kind of imagery. And I think stock images in particular have always been a bit of a no-no. You can get away with it in certain sites, sure, but like how often, and again, this is more of a 10-year ago thing, but how often do we go on like a professional services site or like a healthcare site and you'd see the lab coat holding up the vial, or you'd see people in a meeting room shaking hands. Like, I think people really underestimate how much of a killer imagery is on a site for your conversion rate. And where that's changed more recently, with obviously developments in like AI, mid-journey, stuff like that, is we've kind of seen a move away from people using stock images to moving into this kind of AI generated imagery. And yeah, there's benefits to that because you can add personalization, you can make it specific to your product. But I think having looked at enough of those images, it's really obvious.
And it ruins trust signals. It's one of the biggest trust signals, because if you don't look legit and you don't look like you have a local agency that can help you and you can come and meet them whenever you want, people don't like that kind of thing. People want to know that you are real and tangible and you can help them. And these AI images, because you can do anything with it now, and people just quite frankly take the mick.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think what I've seen specifically working with a few clients is, and it's not even specific to clients at a lower budget or at a lower company size or a lower kind of staff count. It's more, everyone is trying to do more with these features and these tools, to the point where I'm seeing some of our biggest clients try and use AI generated images of their products, for example, and it's just so obvious, I think, because all these images have this sheen to them, you can tell. And I'm constantly pushing the value of, if you've got a product, you have to get good photos of it. If you've got a team, go and get good photos of them. People still engage with real people. People still want to see real products. And I think there's there's no limitation on the benefit of that. If you have the opportunity to go and get photos of actually what you do in your product and your service and your team, like the value is, in my opinion, immeasurable.
Yeah. So if you don't have images of your product, I really recommend it, because people can tell it from a mile off, and it brings your site down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I guess one of the things we wanted to cover as well is the question is around kind of why you don't need to redesign to improve. And I touched on that a little bit earlier, but one of the tools that we've been using recently on a client brief is lead pages. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with that, but it's similar to, there's a few different versions. You've got like unbounced lead pages. There's a HubSpot landing page builder as well. But that's essentially now it's easier than ever to grow your sitemap, to add new pages without having to go through a kind of whole site rebuild. And we're using that to great effect for clients now, because not only are they no code, so it's very simple. You don't need a background in code development. That you can actually use AI prompts to build specific parts of the pages that you need. So if you need a specific page to support a campaign, you don't need to go and work in WordPress. You don't need to work on reskinning all of your landing pages. It's so easy just to kind of build within these platforms and tools quite cost effectively now. We're talking less than £80 a month for subscriptions, sometimes lower than £50 a month. So often when your website isn't delivering, the temptation can be to just, we need to build a new site. It is what it is. Until we build a new site, we can't really move the needle. When actually you don't need to build a new site. Sometimes you just need to build new pages. And that doesn't even need to be within the CMS you've got at the moment, because from my experience, a lot of the time people feel restricted by the CMS and therefore they view the site as incapable of improving. But now you don't need to work within the same CMS. You can connect lead pages to your own subdomains, to your own domains. You can connect unbounced to your own subdomains and domains. And there's some really cool stuff you can do in there as well, like dynamic location modifiers, personalization, all of these things that felt quite restrictive, expensive previously are now really tools that we use every day.
But we still do recommend specialist advice when using these tools, because we still need a designer to talk about the contrast, things that should go above the fold, like talk about the types of hero images to use, make sure they're the correct ones. And it's like we still need our SEO specialists to talk about the different H tag structures and make sure they are correct.
Yeah.
Something that AI can do, but it is limited. And we do find we are babying these tools still.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think my point is more around kind of, I think landing pages specifically get seen as a bit of a stopgap sometimes, where it's like, let's put out this landing page in order to kind of make sure we've got some relevant messaging, a relevant offer out there to support a paid campaign, for example, rather than just directing traffic to a website which is potentially dated. When really, we have businesses in our client base that have used landing pages really successfully. They never direct their traffic to their homepage. They never direct their traffic to a service page. They exclusively work on these landing pages because they get better conversion rates. And as my point is, now it's easier than ever to do that and do it bespoke to the user as well. So definitely check out lead pages, definitely check out unbounced. I think that's something that's worth reviewing, because we're seeing them being used quite often and to great effect as well.
Yeah.
Cool. What would you say are the smallest kind of design tweaks that have quite a big influence, Mitzi? Like in terms of when we build a page, right, our process is to go through Mitzi first or Emma first and get the design right before that moves over to the developer. Obviously, the developer's involved in the conversation, but what are the things that you almost have as a checklist for what to look for when you're building those Figma files?
Readability is a big one. So we are given a H tag structure and we need to format it in a way that it's legible. So whether that's by leading, making sure the spacing is nice and good on the eye, and making sure the width of the different paragraphs are appropriate enough and spaced wisely on the page so that you want to read it and not just skip past it. Because most people just fly through a page until they see something that they like. And another thing, to be able to kind of reduce the amount of viewer fatigue, good contrasting CTA buttons that stand out and are written so people know exactly what they're about to do when that button's clicked. You want it to take them through the journey and stand out, so it's in their face. Readability, functionality, and prompts to make them move on to the next part of their journey.
I think that's a good point around. I think one of the biggest friction points on when we inherit a site for like an SEO contract is we see conversions being quite limited just because there's dry CTAs. And I know this is something Beth's spoken about before around brand voice, is like you need it to be kind of inescapably everywhere, and that includes your CTA. So we've worked with quite quirky B2C brands before that have just had like inquire now as a CTA. Doesn't hold up. Like it feels, not only does it feel boring, but it doesn't hold up with the rest of the experience that you're promoting in your marketing activity, let alone kind of the landing experience on the page as well. So definitely think about what it means for the person when they're clicking on a button. What do they want? If it is just an inquiry, think about how your messaging makes them feel when they're doing
Inquire now to get 10% off now.
Yeah, I think definitely
Specific.
consider the offers. But one of the things that we're doing a lot more of now is actually building different landing pages, either with like personalization modifiers for messaging, or for just building out different landing pages, multiple versions of the same landing page with a different message. Because we've had clients in the past where they've maybe had 2 to 3 landing pages and they just direct all of the traffic from all of their campaigns to these 3 landing pages, which is fine in principle, but it assumes that there's only 2 to 3 messages that generate all of your traffic, which isn't true. And that's why I'm always a big advocate for, if they're clicking on a headline that says 30% off all ties, make sure that's the H1 on the landing experience. And you can do that really easily with location modifiers, with personalization modifiers. It's not something that's super difficult to achieve now. And as I said, tools like lead pages, not to make it sound like this is a sponsorship for them, but they make that really easy. So I think what I want to get away from is there's often a little bit of a preference, I think, for smaller sitemaps, like less is more. But I think you're inevitably restricting your messaging, you're confining your messaging by not having options that match up to the experience that people are first presented with when they become aware of your business. So for me, it's more is sometimes more, because you're able to prioritize different messages in that customer journey. So you don't want to have someone click on an ad that says 30% off all ties and then not have that anywhere visible on the landing experience, or at least in the above the fold. So definitely look at different modifications that you can make to personalize the content on landing experience. And if you can't do that, just have more landing pages. You know, there isn't really, in my eyes, any harm to doing that.
And is there a way that people know specifically what needs changing?
On a landing experience, I think this is a question that we got as well, is how do you kind of know what is the issue with your page when it's not converting? And I think it's a challenge we get a lot of the time. And I think there's a few different culprits. One of them is that measuring conversion rate is quite tough. And I mean that because a lot of people just do the standard all traffic divided by all conversions, which is fine. It will give you an aggregated view. But a lot of that's going to be low intent traffic. So let's say majority of your traffic comes from your blog content. Very low intent traffic. Likelihood is they're not going to convert there and then because they're in an awareness journey. So you can't really calculate that in the same way as someone who's viewed a service page, who's viewed a location page, because someone who's searching for, you know, what is X legislation versus someone who's searching for fire alarm installation company. They're two different types of intent. So for me, what I've kind of moved towards for some clients is forgetting the traffic around spam, around international, around blogs a little bit. Obviously still measuring it, but looking more at decision stage traffic. And you can do some really cool things in like GA4 where you have specific decision pages set up and reports for different events on those pages. So you can actually measure, well, how many people have viewed our service pages? How many people have viewed the pages that we expect to drive bottom of funnel traffic in relation to how many conversions are we getting from those pages as well? And HubSpot's a really good tool for that because you can set up reports on actually where those conversions have come from. It will show you the URL that they converted on. So that's really cool as well. So that's one thing. I think as well, I think people often kind of paint the website failing brush with a lens of it's just not working, when in reality it's one thing that's not working a lot of the time. So you might have, you know, your marketing campaigns, your paid search is delivering traffic, they're landing on the page, they're reaching a form or they're reaching a checkout, and there's something individual within that flow which
if something's not functioning
it's
properly,
not
they will leave.
within that customer journey that isn't working. So that's a big thing. Why we always use like a hotjar is you've got to be listening to the customer. You've got to be seeing where those drop-off points are, because until you know that, you can end up fine-tuning everything when really it's only one lever that you've got to pull. So customer listening is really important. The tough part with that is you're never going to be able to speak to the people that don't convert because you can't track them down. That sounds like I'm a serial killer. I'm not. But the point is, listen to the customer, watch the session, get that data, because then you'll find out where those friction points are. And for me, 9 times out of 10, it's either that the message doesn't align with the marketing, so you promoted an offer that isn't clearly visible on the page, or there's something in your form which is really, really off-putting. So like, we had a client that was asking for specific like business director details in the form, and it didn't work because it meant they had to then leave the page, go and speak to a superior just to submit a form. This is pre-qualification, right? You want it to be as low maintenance as possible. That's not a secret, everyone knows that. So keep the form simple, keep it good. But I think as well, keep it branded. The form is a brand-owned asset. You have potential to make things
is a big thing.
cool, look good, keep it detailed. There's a lot of space there, use it. So yeah, for me, treat the form as an owned asset, make it a good, consistent brand experience, and make it aligned with what you're doing on the page.
And make it work, most importantly. Those are forms that you try and enter something and it just won't let you go to the next page.
Yeah.
And I'm gone.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So should we get into some of the questions? I think first question was from Beth, which is what 3 questions would you ask if someone said their website is failing? I think it depends on, my initial instinct is what does failure look like and compared to what, right? Because again, is it failing in terms of traffic generation or is it failing in terms of conversions? That's kind of the initial question. Like where in your expectations is that falling short, and kind of where have those expectations come from? Because that's a lot easier to diagnose if you've got historical data that proves that you were doing something right previously. I think after that, it becomes a question of, are you directing traffic to the same locations with every single marketing campaign that you're running? As I said, that's a bit of a flaw in my eyes because there's only so much personalization you can do if you're just driving traffic to the same page. So I would say, where are you pushing traffic to? What are your kind of key conversion pages? And what's the makeup of your traffic as well? If the problem is we're getting in all this traffic, but none of it's converting, but then you find out that actually it's all blog traffic, if it's all coming from kind of your awareness stage content, then it's kind of to be surprised. I think when you look at traffic data and conversion data as an aggregate, there's something called the Simpsons paradox, which basically means that you're aggregating all your data, but you're missing those SKUs. Really, you could be driving just a very minimal amount of conversion stage traffic, decision stage traffic. So you really need to set up those reports to enable you to break that down to understand how you're performing across the funnel. So that's those are the places I would start.
Yeah, I would ask, does it function how it should? Because a lot of the mobile design and responsiveness are often a second thought, despite the fact that 60% of users come from mobile. And so, you know, if they're scrolling past and carousels don't work how they do, or forms scroll and scroll and scroll, people will leave the page. I know I do. Another thing I would ask is, like, are you getting to the point quick enough? People are too busy to spend time scrolling on these websites without getting to the point. They don't need to be doing that. They have a task to do. They're often tasked with finding, in our case, a marketing agency that can do their job. And if they don't have their question answered in the first 5 seconds, they're off as well. So it's all about functionality and whether or not they get to the point soon.
I think it's really important, as I said as well, to understand where people are dropping off. Because if it is a traffic to conversion rate challenge, and you can see people accessing your decision stage pages, they're in that kind of content where you want them to be. You've got your messaging right, you've got your offer there, it's clear, it's readable. You've really got to understand, well, what is the friction point? And as I said, the only way you can do that is by setting up like a Hotjar and actually monitoring the sessions. So look at like cart abandonment as well. That's really important for like e-commerce. You can kind of filter out that low intent traffic by looking at people who don't even start a checkout process, who don't even reach the form. Fine, that means it's possibly a messaging issue, or it could be a traffic generation issue where it's like you're just bringing in the wrong type of people who will never convert. The other side of that is if they're reaching a cart, they're adding a product to a basket and they're still churning, it's a checkout issue, it's a conversion issue. That's when you've got to start looking more at your UX. So there is ways you can kind of split hairs here and filter out, well, why aren't people converting? But you really need to have the visibility into that. You can't just look at the numbers and go, well, the UX isn't delivering because I brought in X amount of traffic, but only one of those has converted into a lead. Like you need to kind of get more granular with it using the right tools. So yeah, I think understanding traffic makeup is probably the biggest part for me. Finding out, is it actually the right kind of traffic that would convert, and then working backwards from there.
So based on that, what's one of the biggest things you can do? Smallest things with the biggest impact.
I think there's a few things that it sounds really cliche, and I feel like you can use this as an answer to almost any question in marketing, but A/B testing now is so easy. There's a tool called Nelia, which we've used on WordPress. It's essentially a plugin, but you can A/B test everything from H1s to like individual CSS, right? It's super easy. So there's really no excuse not to do it. And that will give you the opportunity to test like messaging. That will give you the opportunity to test layout, just split it across your traffic. And by doing so, you'll get an idea of what drives more conversions, but you'll also potentially get an answer is it an actual UX problem? Because if you split the tests in two and you find that you're getting similar results either way, it's probably not an issue with the page content. It's an issue with the traffic you're generating and the experience that you're then delivering, or the product that you're then delivering. So that becomes suddenly a higher up challenge as opposed to just one which is, oh, our website isn't working. It's like, no, your traffic, the marketing campaigns you're delivering aren't bringing in the right kind of traffic, or they aren't delivering on the promise that you're setting up as a brand. So A/B testing is good for kind of a proof point. It can tell you multiple things. It's super cliche and it feels like a bit of a lazy shout, I think, but I think my point is more it's so easy now. WordPress makes it so easy. Like there's no excuse to kind of not do it. So I'd say that's something that I would definitely do as part of any project.
Yeah, I think that kind of answers the next question of whether or not the conversion is caused by the website or the offering. If you're doing all these tests and comparing all these ways of doing things and it's still not working, it probably is to do with the authoring.
Yeah, I think so. And I think I kind of went through how if you track at like cart abandonment level, or like they call it scroll depth, how far people move down the page before they churn. Like if you track that will give you an insight into kind of whether it's wrong message or UX. And I think it's easier to track in your kind of e-com fields because cart abandonment's a really good indication of that UX not holding up. If you've been clear about price from the get-go, they add the items to their cart and they still don't convert. Like it's either a not the right time issue, or it's they can't feasibly figure out how to get to the next stage. So I think that's a good indication. I think where you can tell where it's an offer or messaging issue is time on page engagement. If they're getting on the page and they're leaving quickly, in my eyes, that's an indication that you're not actually delivering on the promise that they expected from your marketing, from the initial touch point.
I've got a new question.
New question, cool.
Yes. Tracking seems key to diagnosing issues and making good future decisions. Do you think we can generally find what we need in something like Google Analytics, or are there other better tools you recommend?
I think yes and no. I think GA4 is a beast and it's a hard nut to crack, but you can make it bend in a million different ways. So yes, if you've got the time, the knowledge, and the experience, you can make GA4 work in that regard. But I think there are tools that you can buy off the shelf that make it a lot easier. So it really depends on what your brand and business is. We have clients that exclusively use GA4. We have clients that exclusively will get that data from HubSpot. Yes, it's a little bit less sophisticated than GA4, but it works for them. So yes, it's a tough one to answer. I think GA4 is the most reliable source in my opinion, but I appreciate that it's also really, really unwieldy. It's hard to set up, takes time, but it will let you split hairs between pages. It will let you set up different events. It will let you track different types of conversions, all of which is really important in my opinion. Hope that answers your question.
Another one which may be for you. So when conversion rates are good, but new customer visits are dropping, what can we do?
It's the golden question. Marketing. I think there's a million different things you can do. One of the quickest ways to get traffic in is, in theory, paid search. Obviously, we do a lot of paid search for clients, so that's going to be a pretty standard answer for me. So, but it's quite a difficult question to answer because it's essentially how do you get traffic, and then that leads into how do you get conversions, how do you get customers. So really it's looking at your funnel and understanding, well, where are these potential customers at? Where can we find them and how can we reach them with targeted messaging, which is obviously a strategy question. So it's a little hard to give a kind of blanket answer, but if you're looking for fast traffic, we find Meta is amazing at generating really low cost traffic, Meta ads. So that's probably a place to start. If your product, which I'm not sure what it is, if your product lends itself to more kind of e-com, B2C intent, then try Meta, because it's a really good way of generating cost per click at a really low rate and really affordable traffic as well. So that would be my recommendation.
We've got 3 minutes left, so
Nice, gone quick.
One more question and then sort of a round up at the end.
Yeah, sure. Maybe one for you. Any tips around accessibility? And also, I like the question. I've talked for ages, but I just ensuring it performs well on mobile is something you touched on. And I think the biggest thing for me is mobile isn't just desktop on a smaller screen, right? People treat it as that. They build desktop and then they optimize to mobile after. You can't do that anymore, right?
No, you can't. I mean, a lot of people think you should do it first nowadays, but we don't, because I think a lot of the people that we market towards will go on a bigger screen first. They want all the details big and displayed in their face. But for mobile, we just make it slightly more simple. We make sure everything flows nicely, nice and middle aligned, smaller paragraphs, smaller sentences, smaller widths, and just bring everything up. And we like carousels, we need to make sure that they go off the page nicely, they sit tight, and I think it's lots of testing. We've got to test on loads of devices, we test around the office, make sure everyone sees it how they should, and yeah, there's a lot with accessibility really. There's about contrast, legibility is a big thing obviously.
I think you need to be quite brutal when you're doing mobile design, don't you? Because you know, designing desktop first it's probably not the best practice in all fields. Sometimes it is. You like to think that in a B2B setting that designing desktop first is the better approach. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But really, like, you have to be brutal if you're starting with that desktop design, right? To get it to mobile, you have to be prepared to kill the things you love to make it work, because you might have the most beautiful desktop design, but if it doesn't lend well to mobile and that generates 70% of your traffic, like, you're wasting your time. So I think it's a balance. You know, we always kind of assess the client, assess the brief, assess the product, and decide, well, where are these users going to be shopping? And again, GA4 is brilliant for giving you insights of where they're coming from on a device level as well. So think about it, look at the data, don't just make that judgment kind of single-handedly. Use the information that Google will give you to kind of tailor how you should prioritize your site design. But to Mitzi's point, like, you have to be ready to make mobile simple, and if that means sacrificing some of the design, you know, so be it. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Cool, I think that rounds up everything. So this has flown by, a bit of a roundup. I think we've talked quite a bit about data. So definitely, I would, in my eyes, if I could give you one takeaway, it's think about conversion rate in the logic of decision stage pages, not just in total conversion rate traffic versus conversions. And that's really important, because it will give you an idea of the makeup of traffic and how that's influencing your conversion rate. And I think look at solutions to build landing pages faster and more cost effectively.
AI can be your friend.
Yeah, exactly, it can be, but just be careful with the imagery, because as we said, like, it's more obvious than you think, and you know, the big brands are doing it and they're still not getting away with it. So I would say if you've got budget to put towards product photo shoots, towards content creation, it's still as valuable as ever. Yeah, and if there is any other questions, we will be around on the AMA for a little bit longer, so just let us know. But sorry if we haven't got to everyone's questions today, but hopefully this was useful and a good insight for you all.
Thank you.